I was 11 when my mother handed me a trash bag and told me to pack, not a suitcase, a trash bag. She didn't scream. She didn't explain. She just said, "You can't stay here anymore." That night, she drove me 3 hours away and never came back. For 21 years, I believed I was the problem, that I had done something so unforgivable, my own mother erased me. Until one afternoon, a lawyer called. He said my mother left a sealed file, locked for 2 decades. And what was inside didn't prove she stopped loving me. It proved something else. Something that made me question whether she pushed me away to save me. So if she didn't abandon me, why did she make me believe she did? I would rather have you hate me than attend your funeral. The lawyer didn't look up when he read it. She just let the sentence settle in the quiet, temperature-controlled air of his office in Midtown Columbus. The HVAC hummed softly overhead. Outside, traffic moved along Broad Street in slow, mid-afternoon rhythm. I stared at the paper in front of me. That handwriting, precise, is slanted slightly right. The capital M in Mom always curved too wide. I hadn't seen it in 21 years. For most of my life I believed my mother threw me away. Now a stranger in a navy suit was telling me she did it to keep me alive. So why did she really send me away? Easy was 11 when she told me to pack. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming. No broken plates. No police sirens. Just a quiet October evening in our 2-bedroom rental outside Columbus, Ohio. The kitchen light flickered slightly because the bulb never sat right in its socket. The house smelled like overcooked spaghetti and lemon dish soap. "You can't stay here anymore." She said it like you'd tell someone school was canceled. I remember the refrigerator humming, the sound of my own breathing getting louder in my ears. "Why?" I asked. "You'll be safer somewhere else." Safer. She didn't elaborate. She handed me a black trash bag. That detail has always stayed with me. Not a suitcase, not a box, a trash bag. At 11, you don't understand legal danger. You don't understand strategic distancing. You understand symbols. And a trash bag tells a child everything she thinks she needs to know. I packed 2 sweaters, a notebook, a paperback novel, my toothbrush. I remember standing in my bedroom looking around, trying to decide what mattered enough to take if I wasn't coming back. She drove me 3 hours south to my Aunt Linda's house in Dayton. We didn't talk, the radio stayed off. When we pulled into Linda's driveway, my mother turned off the engine but didn't look at me. "You'll be okay here." That was it. She kissed the top of my head, barely, and then she drove away. I watched the red taillights disappear at the end of the street. She never came back. Linda was practical. A nurse. Divorced. 2 teenage sons. She didn't ask many questions. She assumed my mother and I had fought. Adults prefer conflict they can categorize. I slept in the converted office room next to the laundry closet. At night, I could hear the washing machine pipes ticking as they cooled. I wrote my mother 3 letters that first year. None were answered. The 4th letter came back stamped. "Return to sender, no longer at this addresses." That was the moment something hardened inside me. Children personalize everything. I decided I must have been difficult, unlovable, replaceable. So I became the opposite of difficult. Good grades, no complaints, no extra needs. I learned to read rooms quickly, to anticipate moods, to minimize myself. By 18, I had scholarships and a plan. By 22, I had a master's degree in forensic accounting from Ohio State. People assume that field is about numbers. It isn't. It's about inconsistencies. It's about studying what people try to hide. I built a career tracing money trails, identifying shell companies, analyzing false expense reports. I work now for a risk advisory firm in Chicago. Mid-sized, corporate investigations, internal fraud. I make 6 figures. I live alone in a 10th floor condo in the West Loop. From the outside, I look stable. Inside, I am still that 11-year-old watching taillights disappear. When my mother died, I felt almost nothing. Cardiac arrest. 63. A hospital social worker left a voicemail because I was listed as next of kin. Didn't attend the funeral. That sounds cruel when I say it aloud. But funerals are for grieving relationships. Ours ended in 2005. 2 months later, I received a call from Daniel Mercer, estate attorney. "There are matters concerning a trust established in your name," he said. Almost declined the meeting. Pride is stubborn, but curiosity is stronger. His office was controlled in a way my childhood home never was. Clean lines, muted art. The faint smell of polished wood. He opened a file labeled, "Hayes Family Trust, 2005. Is your mother established an irrevocable trust shortly before you were relocated to your aunt's home?" Relocated. Interesting choice of word. There were sealed documents, he continued. To be opened when you turned 32. I turned 32 3 weeks ago. She slid the letter across the table. I read the first line. I would rather have you hate me than attend your funeral. My chest tightened, but my face stayed neutral. What funeral? I asked. Yours, he said gently, is my biological father. Thomas Kincaid was not the vague memory I carried of a man who left when I was 4. He had a record: assault, fraud. Prison time in early 2005. He resurfaced after federal incarceration. There were letters, copies included in the file, is demanding visitation. Threatening language. One sentence underlined by my mother's attorney. If I can't have access to my daughter, neither will you. My mother filed for a protective order in Franklin County. It was granted temporarily, but temporary orders expire, and violent men do not always respect paperwork. She was advised to relocate, Mr. Mercer said. Change identities, disappear. She didn't, I said. No. She lacked the financial capacity for a complete disappearance. Instead, she chose a targeted separation. Is targeted separation. That's what lawyers call it when a mother makes her daughter hate her on purpose. She believed if he perceived you as estranged from her, you would no longer be leverage. I stared at the table. Leverage. I had been leverage. I didn't cry in his office. Isai requested copies of everything. Restraining order filings. Police reports. Court records. If this was true, it would stand up to scrutiny. Back in Chicago, I did what I always do. I verified. Franklin County Court Archives confirmed the restraining order. Is public criminal records confirmed Thomas Kincaid's charges. Federal sentencing documents matched the dates. It was real. My entire narrative was wrong. And yet, there was a detail that didn't sit right. If he died in 2018 overdose in Detroit, why didn't she contact me after that? Why did she let me believe I was unwanted until she died in 2021? That question became the splinter. The second envelope contained her full explanation. She wrote that she believed he would escalate, that she feared surveillance, that distancing me publicly reduced my risk. She wrote that Linda agreed to forward report cards and updates. She wrote that she tracked my life quietly. And then, I have loved you in silence. I chose your safety over your affection. I know the cost. That sentence undid me, because she acknowledged the cost. She knew exactly what she was taking from me. And she took it anyway. It happened on my living room floor. Chicago in late February is gray in a way that seeps into you. I sat with the letter spread out in front of me. The radiator hissed softly. Traffic moved below in steady waves. For 21 years, I told myself I survived abandonment. Now I had to consider that I survived protection. I pressed the heels of my palms into my eyes until I saw white light. And then I cried. Not loudly. Just enough to release something long frozen. Here's the part people don't talk about. Even if she saved me, she still left. Protection does not erase trauma. Intent does not undo impact. I started therapy again. Dr. Patel's office smells faintly of sandalwood and clean linen. She did what she believed was necessary. I said during our third session. And? Dr. Patel asked. And I don't know if that makes it forgivable. She nodded. Both grief and gratitude can coexist. I don't like tidy psychological phrases, but she wasn't wrong. I called Linda. You knew everything, I said. Yes? Why didn't you tell me when he died? There was a pause. Because your mother didn't know? Linda said quietly. She never found out he was gone. That stopped me. My mother died in 2021. He died in 2018. She spent her last 3 years still afraid. There was no relief for her. No moment of safety. Just vigilance until the end. The second time I sat in Daniel Mercer's office, I brought a yellow legal pad. Not because I doubted him anymore, because I needed structure. If my mother had dismantled our relationship as a protective measure, then I needed to understand the mechanics of that decision. Emotionally, yes, but also legally. The trust she created in 2005 wasn't impulsive. It was methodical, irrevocable trust. Funded initially with $42,000, nearly all of her liquid savings at the time. Over the next 16 years, she added to it gradually small deposits, tax refunds, insurance proceeds after selling the house. The trust named Mercer's firm as fiduciary. Not Linda, not a family friend. Distance again. There's also a conditional clause, Mercer said, adjusting his glasses. What kind of condition? I looked up sharply. Relocation? New identity documentation, interstate move, private schooling under guardianship, witness protection adjacent. She was preparing to disappear. I said quietly, yes. And instead she made me disappear from her. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The more difficult question remained, why didn't she contact me after 2018? Mercer slid another file forward. Medical records. She was diagnosed with early-stage cardiomyopathy in 2017. Progressive. Not immediately fatal, but serious. She may have believed re-establishing contact would destabilize your life. Mercer said carefully. Or expose you if Mr. Kincaid had associates. His fear expands in isolation. If she had spent over a decade anticipating violence, her nervous system never reset. Even after he died, something she never knew, her brain likely remained in threat mode. I understand that clinically. It doesn't make it easier emotionally. News travels fast in families that thrive on partial information. Within weeks of the trust distribution, I began receiving calls. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. A distant uncle. Must be nice, one of them said over the phone. Getting rewarded after cutting her off. That sentence surprised me. I hadn't cut her off, she cut me off. Or so I thought. There's no socially graceful way to explain strategic abandonment at Thanksgiving. I considered ignoring them all. Instead, I invited Linda to lunch. We met at a quiet diner outside Dayton. Vinyl booths. Coffee that tasted like it had been reheated too many times. You think I'm angry about the money? I said. Linda shook her head. I think you're angry about the time. That was accurate. She made me believe I was disposable. She made a choice she thought would keep you alive? I know. You don't have to like it. I stared at my coffee. For years I believed my mother chose pride over love. Now I understood, she chose fear over closeness. Both hurt. There was a night about 3 weeks after the second meeting with Mercer. When I almost did something reckless, I drafted an email. Addressed to the regional office of the FBI, subject line. Historical Threat Inquiry, Thomas Kincaid. Wanted to know if there were additional files. Associates, surveillance. Anything my mother might have known that I didn't. I wanted confirmation that her fear had been justified. Halfway through typing, I stopped. What was I hoping for? If they responded with additional threats, it would validate her decision, but reignite anxiety. If they responded with nothing, it would imply she sacrificed us for a ghost. Neither outcome would give me peace. I deleted the draft. Some investigations do not require reopening. That was the moment I realized I had to stop approaching this like a case file. This wasn't fraud detection, it was grief. I flew back to Columbus in early April. The cemetery sat on a slight hill, trees just beginning to bud. The air was cool enough to make my fingers stiff. Isher grave marker was modest. Granite name dates. No epitaph. I stood there longer than I expected. I had rehearsed a speech on the flight. None of it surfaced. Instead I said, you could have told me more. The wind moved through the trees softly. You didn't trust the world. I continued. I wish you had trusted me. That was the truth beneath the anger. I knelt and placed my palm flat against the cold stone. For 21 years, I believed my mother didn't love me. But the truth was, she loved me enough to lose me. It's a complicated kind of love. One that fractures both people involved. Memory is malleable. After the lawyer's revelation, small details from childhood resurfaced differently. The new deadbolt she installed in early 2005 is the way she checked the rearview mirror repeatedly while driving. The night I woke up and found her sitting at the kitchen table with unpaid bills spread out, staring at nothing. At 11, I interpreted her anxiety as irritation. At 32, I recognize hypervigilance. She wasn't cold. She was scared. That doesn't absolve everything, but it humanizes her. The trust disbursed just under $380,000 after taxes and administrative fees. It felt surreal. For years, I struggled through scholarships and part-time work. She had been building something quietly in the background. I paid off the remaining balance on my condo. I invested the majority through a fiduciary advisor in Chicago. And I allocated a portion, about $75,000, to a nonprofit in Illinois that assists women navigating custody disputes involving documented domestic violence. Not publicly, no plaque, just a transfer. Did it because my mother faced a legal system that offered temporary protection against permanent fear. I did it because other women are likely sitting at kitchen tables right now, making impossible calculations. I don't know how to recalibrate, I told Dr. Patel. In what sense? My identity was built around being unwanted. If that's not true, then who am I? She leaned back slightly. You are someone who survived both abandonment and protection. Both shaped you. I laughed softly. That's not very marketable. This isn't branding, Caroline, it's integration. Integration is slower than revelation. Some days I feel grateful. Some days I feel cheated. Once, during a session, I admitted something I hadn't said aloud. If she had told me the truth at 11, I would have gone with her anywhere. Dr. Patel nodded. Of course you would have. That's the vulnerability she didn't risk. Because children talk, and violent men listen. A month after my visit to the cemetery, Linda mailed me a small box. Inside were copies of my childhood report cards, photos from my high school graduation, a program from my college commencement. She asked for these, Linda said when I called her. Every year. She kept them? Yes. That detail landed heavier than the money. She had followed my life from a distance. She watched me grow up without being allowed to participate. The tragedy is symmetrical. There was one more document in the trust file I hadn't paid much attention to initially. A personal directive. It stated that if I chose to reject the inheritance, the funds would be donated to domestic violence prevention initiatives automatically. No alternative heirs. No family redistribution. She anticipated the possibility that I might refuse her final gesture. Even in death, she accounted for my anger. That level of foresight felt like both care and calculation. She knew me. I still struggle with intimacy. I still monitor exit routes in unfamiliar buildings. I still keep an emergency savings account larger than necessary. Trauma adapts. It rarely disappears. But something fundamental shifted. I no longer see myself as discarded. I see myself as protected imperfectly. There's a difference. Protection without explanation feels like betrayal. Protection with explanation, delayed 21 years, is complicated. On the anniversary of her death, I returned to the cemetery. This time I brought flowers, white lilies. I don't forgive you completely, I said quietly. But I understand you. The sky was clear. Early summer, warm air moving gently. I wish we'd had more time. That is the grief that remains, not anger, time. I stood there until the sun dipped lower and shadows lengthened across the grass. Then I walked back to my car without looking over my shoulder. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone was about to leave. For 21 years, I thought my mother didn't love me, but the truth was, she loved me enough to lose me. Sometimes the deepest love looks like abandonment. This wasn't revenge, it was accountability.